What's up, guys? It's me Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev, which will be a 12-rounder for the unified WBO, WBA, and IBF heavyweight championship. And this fight will be Saturday, December 12th, from the SSE Arena in London, England. And this fight will be broadcasted on DAZN in the United States and Sky Sports abroad. And again, both fighters, Anthony Joshua, fighting out of London, England, won a gold medal in the London 2012 Olympics for his country. He currently has an excellent professional record of 23 wins, 1 defeat, with 21 coming by way of knockout. He's currently ranked number 3 by BoxRec, and he's amongst the top 3 best heavyweights. I have him at second. BoxRec has him at third, as I just said before. Tyson Fury, in my opinion, is number 1, Joshua number 2, and Wilder number 3. In my opinion, he just has a way better resume than Wilder. That's why I have him second. But it all started out when he knocked out Dillian Whyte in the 7th round in their December of 2015 outing for the British heavyweight title. I mean, that fight was a war. Joshua was hurt early on in the fight. Then he came back, knocking Dillian Whyte out cold with an uppercut. What a fight that was. Then he moved on to take on the IBF heavyweight world champion Charles Martin in his just 15th fight, or going into the 16th. He was 15-0 at the time. Knocked out Charles Martin to win the IBF heavyweight title in April of 2016 in the 2nd round. Then he got a title defense against Dominic Breazeale, Eric Molina. Then he took on Vladimir Klitschko. Many people thought he would lose that fight. Klitschko was way more experienced, and he won his gold medal in 1996 as opposed to Joshua in 2012. It's a difference of about 15 years since both of them won their gold medals going into that fight. I mean, Klitschko is just way more experienced than Joshua when they were going into that. I mean, it was really old versus new. It was sort of passing down the torch to a new era, because Joshua now is being seen as the next Klitschko. He's a 2-time world champion. He beat Klitschko and won more world titles. I mean, Joshua is an excellent fighter. And in that Klitschko fight, as most of you know, Joshua got an 11th round stoppage victory, but he did drop Klitschko 3 times. Klitschko dropped Joshua once in the 6th, and what a fight that was. That was one of the best fights of 2017. What a fight. Then moving on, he got a title defense against Carlos Takam. And I forgot to mention that in the Klitschko fight, the vacant WBA super heavyweight world title was on the line, and he also added that title to his accolades. But then, as I was saying before, he got that win versus Carlos Takam in the 11th round because of cuts. Takam had a massive cut on his right eye, and the referee had to stop it. But he also became a 3-belt world champion right after the Takam fight, as he took on Joseph Parker, winning by unanimous decision. It was a very wide decision. I scored it around 119-109. Judges scored it 120-108 and 119-109 around there. I mean, it was a very boring fight, but Joshua was sort of the aggressor, and he landed more shots than Parker did. But, yeah, as I said before, he won that WBO world title. At that time, he was a 3-belt world champion, looking like he was going to conquer the heavyweight division, and he was undefeated at the time. And that was, I believe, his first decision win. But then he took on Alexander Povetkin right after that fight, and he got a dominant KO victory in the midst of the fight. He dropped Povetkin twice, even though Povetkin did sort of stun him in the 1st round right at the end. But he did drop Povetkin twice, as I said before, and got an excellent KO win, I think it was. He backed Povetkin up, landed a huge right hand, put him down. He got back up, and his corner had to sort of wave it off and get into the ring. And Joshua won that one. But most of you know, in his U.S. debut, right after the Povetkin fight, it was a disaster. Joshua just didn't look right. He looked way too heavy. He came in at more than 250, I believe so. He's known for weighing in at 245, Joshua, to 249. He came in huge for that fight. And he really just looked like he built up a lot of muscle in that training camp. No losing weight, no looking for speed. He was looking for straight power and an early knockout in that fight. And he just didn't look right. His style, he kept his hands too low, in my opinion. Joshua normally has them a little higher. And he just didn't look right. He was chewing on his mouthpiece. And maybe it was just because he was on U.S. soil and never experienced the crowd not chanting his name the whole night. As most of you know, in round number 3, Joshua dropped Ruiz. Then Ruiz came back up, fired back, and scored a knockdown, dropping Joshua with a huge shot in the equilibrium. Then in the 7th round, after a very close fight, I believe Ruiz was ahead by 1 point. Joshua got dropped again, and then again, and the referee waved it off, and Andy Ruiz won via upset, and everyone was calling the Mexican Rocky, and it was a mega upset, definitely the biggest upset of 2019, and a great fight as well. But then at the end of 2019, December 7th to be precise, about a year ago, they rematched. Joshua winning via wide decision. And he came in very lean in that fight. He came in at 237, a career low, actually. In this fight, he did weigh in at 240, Pulev at 239. It's pretty much an average weight for Joshua. Joshua weighed in at 240 when he fought Michael Sprott a couple years back, and 242 when he fought Joseph Parker, so a little bit around there. But in that Ruiz fight, Ruiz came in nearly 30 pounds heavier than what he came in. I believe he maybe 20 pounds or 15 pounds. It was a significant amount. I believe in the first fight he weighed in at 260 something. Second fight he weighed in at 280 something. I mean, he was huge in the second fight, Ruiz. And he just didn't train. I mean, he was just hyped up, getting all the money from the first fight and the second fight. And yeah, he just lost. He really lost big in the second fight. He lost via wide decision. Joshua put on a show like we've never seen in that second fight in Saudi Arabia. He put on a boxing masterclass, beating Andy Ruiz in all 12 rounds. I scored a 120-108. Ruiz didn't do anything. I mean, he wasn't able to get past Joshua's jab. Joshua cut him open, and Ruiz was just trying to land dirty shots. He was hitting him on the back of the head, trying to hit him in the clinch. I mean, Ruiz, he didn't look great that night, and Joshua looked excellent, regaining his titles. And now, the question is, how will Joshua fight since fighting that cautious in that rematch versus Ruiz? Will he fight like old Joshua, throwing hooks, trying to knock a guy out and look excellent? Or will he just box like he did against Andy Ruiz? And we'll know this Saturday night. But then moving on to his opponent, Kubrat Pulev, known as the Cobra, fighting out of Sofia, Bulgaria, has a professional record of 28 wins, 1 defeat, 14 coming by way of knockout. His only KO loss, as most of you know, is in 2015 to Vladimir Klitschko for the unified heavyweight world titles. And then, as most of you know, he did lose that fight by KO in the 5th round. And that was a dominant performance by Klitschko. I mean, Pulev was out every round. I mean, he would get dropped so much. Whenever Klitschko would land that trademark left hook, Pulev would get dropped. I mean, and that was 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, around there. And Pulev was maybe around 34, 35 years old. And he still couldn't take punches, and that was in Pulev's prime. Now Pulev is around 40 years old, and I don't really see him doing anything to Joshua in this fight. Getting into Pulev's resume, he has wins over Huey Fury by unanimous decision, Bogdan Dinu, and his most recent fight he took on Rydell Booker in a very, very boring unanimous decision. He looked terrible in that fight, I have to say. I hate to say it that brutally honest, but he looked terrible against Rydell Booker. But Rydell Booker just got stopped recently by Filip Hrgovic, which is sort of a statement, since no one has ever stopped him, including Pulev, who's known as a top 10 heavyweight, and I forgot to mention that Pulev is ranked number 11 by BoxRec. But Pulev also has wins against Alexander Dimitrenko, Alexander Ustinov, Tony Thompson, and a split decision win to Derek Chisora in 2016, and that was about his last good win against Derek Chisora, unless you want to count that Bogdan Dinu win, but Gerald Miller already took care of Bogdan Dinu before that, especially earlier. And that fight versus Bogdan Dinu, he had a huge, massive cut. And then after that, I'm not going to get into the Pulev situation. I mean, he was in a very controversial situation after winning that fight in the after party against Bogdan Dinu. But just mentioning that cut was very bad. It just sort of was like 3 cuts. I mean, he had 1 cut on his cheek going all the way up to his eyelid. I mean, it was terrible. But he was able to get a knockout, and after multiple shots behind the head, Bogdan Dinu was out. And that was very controversial, that fight, 100%, after the fight and during the fight. But it ultimately counted as a KO win for Pulev. My prediction for this fight is likely a mid-round stoppage for Anthony Joshua to retain his world titles and defend them for the first time since losing them to Andy Ruiz. But I think this fight will lie between the 5th and the 7th rounds. As similar to the Klitschko fight, Pulev came in there, got dropped twice in the first round. I believe so, or was in the 3rd round. Then he got finished off in the 5th by a beautiful left hook. I mean, Pulev was out cold in that fight versus Klitschko. Out cold. And it was whenever he would get hit by a shot. And Klitschko was really the only power puncher Pulev has fought, unless you want to count Derek War Chisora. But Pulev is just, he's 40 years old. He hasn't looked impressive in a while. And I think he's on his way out, and this is his last ticket. Pulev, as most of you know, was supposed to fight Joshua in 2018, pulled out of that one. And I believe he was supposed to fight Klitschko before the initial Klitschko date. He's just known for pulling out of fights, and I believe he pulled out of when this was supposed to be scheduled, another date in 2018, but it was originally supposed to be in June. I made a video on the fight being official, but obviously the pandemic closed that one down. But now it's here. The fight's now, and I'm very excited for it to see how Anthony Joshua would look. But I am assuming that Joshua will get a comfortable KO win.